as you recognize that time is accelerating, right? Your perceived time is accelerating. You should get nervous about that. Like it's like anxiety. Like, I cite this, I cite Pink Floyd, which is, Time. It's one of my favorite songs, like Pink Floyd, Time. Listen to that song and the words. And one day you find 10 years have gone behind. No one told you when to run. No one said start running, and you look behind and 10 years have gone. And so like it's anxiety. And so you have to like stay calm. So how do you find the calm within that? Like that's a real interesting, and the way you do that is this idea of self-mastery and recognize that it is clock time and that there are changes happening here.
As listeners of this show have probably already noticed, I've been trying to identify the market players around biological aging clocks. And that's where I came across a curious project called Foxo Technologies. And today's guest is its founder, who's, as far as I know, is not at the company anymore, Jon Sabes. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. Great to be here. Thanks for finding me.
Let me start way back because as I was researching you, I have noticed that you have lived an extraordinary life. So I'm pretty interested about your story. What's your deal, Jon?
Yeah, what is my deal? That's well, that's still unraveling, right? So we're still finding out what my deal is. But I would say to date, what we know about Jon is he's the oldest of three boys. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, very interesting, loving, caring family. Always grew up wanting to build and wanting to be creative, loving business, and yeah, so that's my deal. I guess you would call me a serial entrepreneur at this point. That's sort of the catchphrase. But I was a lawyer and well, I was first a financier, really, and then I became a lawyer. Went to law school, and I like to say you marry a lawyer with a financier, and you get a structured finance professional. So I was very much into structured capital structures and cash flows and finance, and um, that led me then to kind of creating several businesses. Which the big business that I founded was a company called GWG Holdings. It was in what's known as the life settlement industry, which is the purchase of life insurance policies from old people who no longer want, need, or could afford them. And I founded that company in partnership with the European Money Center Bank. I had $200 million to go buy these policies when I started the company. It was a very exciting business. And it was through the creation of that business, that journey, that led me to biological aging and epigenetic clocks, which I'm sure we're going to get to. And so that's kind of the story. I mean, Jon is an active guy. I'm a busybody. I love to be outside. I love health. I love wellness. I love self-improvement. I love personal growth. I want to see others do the same, and I want to help create conditions for prosperity and success for others. And so that's in my call it latest iteration of Jon and some of the things that he's working on today.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years and but I created and run a software development company, and your world is still very far away from me. But we'll see some touch points there. Uh, so okay. Regarding your ventures, were you like running them in parallel or it's in a serial manner?
Yeah, I'd say it's sequential,
Sequential.
serial. Yeah, in a sequential sort of. So the things I've been doing really, again, started with GWG as a financier and structured financial professional, learning about actuarial science and the life insurance industry, building that business quite successfully, being frustrated then with, and I describe as an entrepreneur, we oftentimes, the magic is in the hard work you're avoiding. And solving the hard problems and working hard against those problems is really inside of your lane, so to speak, is how I've really focused my career and I focus my efforts, which then leads to kind of sequential development in a realm of competency. So I see these things all very linear, tied, one thing leading to the other as I gain knowledge and expertise. And so the big challenge we had in the life settlement industry was predicting how long people live. And so that led me to, I yelled at my team, there must be a better way, blah, 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 blah. Of course, no one did anything. So I started reading peer reviewed scientific articles. I'd never read a single one. And so I self studied and learned what about genetics, and then ultimately epigenetic science, which led me to Steve Horvath and the epigenetic clock. So that's sort of how I work. I describe that as developing a realm of competency, and you want to stay in your lane in your realm of competency. I think entrepreneurs often kind of chase shiny objects outside of their realm of competency. And while I'm certainly don't pretend to be a PhD level, epigenetic biological like researcher, I do understand the science behind it, and I do understand a commercial application for that science, which was originally to predict how long people live for life settlements. But then I saw a larger opportunity for the life insurance industry as a whole for underwriting. And that became the spin-off of Foxo Technologies. And so that was Foxo Technologies. I got bought out of GWG. And I said, well, as part of my buyout, you don't want this technology subsidiary. Let me spin it out and create more value, because that's really where my head was at. And so I created Foxo Technologies, spun that out.
Did you do it alone? Were you the sole founder of Foxo Technologies, or?
Well, by that time, GWG was a publicly traded company listed on NASDAQ with a couple $1 billion balance
I
sheet.
see.
Yeah, so
But
so I had a whole
but
board and a company, and so I
huh?
spun it out. And I brought a team. I had my small team who had been working on this. This is sort of a skunk works project within the GWG machine. And so I spun it out as the CEO and an independent board, and I went on to commercialize.
And you took Foxo public later, or?
Yeah, Foxo Technologies became a publicly traded company. So when I spun it out, I was planning on, I had investment bankers who wanted to do IPO. I was all set to go with that. And then really just before we started going into that process, I was introduced to a special purpose acquisition company, otherwise known as a SPAC. And these SPACs had lots of capital who were looking and specialized area of expertise. And they proposed a different way to become a publicly traded company and get the growth capital I would need to commercialize and build Foxo Technologies. So I decided not to do my IPO and transact with this SPAC, which ended up being a disaster in its own right. And as I like to say, I got SPACed and betrayed by some board of directors, and they fired me. And so here I am today, a few years out of that. And my new company is called Longevity Financial Partners, where I'm continuing to work in the area of finance, financial services, and its convergence with longevity in multiple respects. Because the observation I came to was all financial products are deeply intertwined into longevity. And the industry, the financial services industry, really hasn't recognized that. In fact, they've been so ignorant of it. It's absurd. And so that's really been my quest, and I'll call the areas in which I've been working in for, almost over 2 decades.
Okay, so many interesting things there, but I want to
Yeah.
go back to Foxo a little bit, because so look, in the biological aging clock space, I've been exploring people like the Mudo clocks, the Bolt's blood clock, PhenoAge, and there are a bunch of clocks. But when it comes to the Horvath line of clocks, the Horvath 1, Horvath 2, Grim Age, Grim 2. Then there is the Clock Foundation, the My DNA Age, Foxy Technology holds some license. There is the PAN Pangea Capita, who holds Horvat licenses. So there is like a huge web of, I don't understand what's going on in here exactly. So do you even know what I'm talking about? And if you know, then can you explain to me how things are working here?
Well, I kind of know. Okay, let's say that I have an understanding of a lot of the clocks and the people behind them that you described. It's been a little uh, time since I've been closer to that area. But let me back up maybe to kind of um, give some perspective, at least mine, as to these clocks and certainly what they are from my perspective, and certainly how I propose to commercialize them. Um, so I had come to this conclusion that there wasn't anything in genetics that was really telltale about predicting longevity. I mean, yeah, I could ask you if your parents died at age 70 or are still alive at age 100, and certainly that was indicative of something. But who cares? And so and then and so I kind of come to that conclusion by my own research, and I had really understood a lot of more that about genetics and genetic science, what it was, what it wasn't. And my brother, because I'd again been yelling at my team, he gave me a copy of Nature magazine, and the cover story was Dr. Steve Horvath has discovered something incredibly interesting. This clock, this epigenetic clock. And so I read the article, and by this time I could understand certainly what it wasn't. And I wasn't sure what it was, but it looked like it wasn't genetics, and it looked like it was something very interesting. Like I'm like, whoa, yeah, and so you go back and you read that original article, and it still holds to this day. And so I was making a lot of trips out to the West Coast, so I contacted Steve Horvath and I said, hey, can I, meet you? He says, yeah, sure, come by, office hours Tuesday. Or okay, great. So I went down to UCLA and I sat down with Steve, went to his office and sat across from him. I said, let me understand this. Let me get this right. This biological clock thing. If I've got two 60-year-olds, okay, and by all measures, they look pretty much the same. But one guy's epigenetic clock says he's 70, biologically age 70, and the other guy says he's 50, okay, by your epigenetic clock. Are you telling me that the hazard ratio of risk of mortality for the guy who's biologically 70 is really much greater than the guy who's biologically 50? He goes, oh, hands down, 100%, blah, 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 blah. Like he was, Steve Horvath is a Harvard trained, MIT mathematic, Austrian biostatistician. Okay. Like this guy is so stone cold. You can't get him to laugh or probably the best joke. I mean, actually, he's got a good sense. But my point is, he doesn't joke around. You know what I mean? It's like these are the facts, right? And I was like, huh. Well, that's pretty interesting. I said, have you ever heard of this thing called the life insurance industry? He's like, no, not really. What do you mean? And I'm like, well, it's just this little business based upon predicting how long these two 60-year-olds, by all measures, will live. And he's like,
Okay.
oh, that's a really interesting idea. I've never really thought of that before. I'm like, yeah. So, because, that's what they're trying to figure is, but how old you are. And he goes, oh, and then I said, so yeah, the first question's something like, I said something like, well, you know, something about smoking. He goes, oh, I could tell you if they smoked and how much they smoked. I go, well, that's really interesting because that's the second or third question on the life insurance application. The first one is how old you are, the biggest driver of a prospective mortality. The second question is, are you a male or female? Okay. And the third question is, do you smoke or not? Okay. I'm like, so you're telling me you can pick up an epigenetic signal on a tobacco use? He's like, hands down, not only if they smoke, but how much they smoke. I'm like, well, Mr. Dr. Steve Horvath, I would like to license your technology for this little industry called the life insurance industry. Now, I was so naive about everything else at that point, but I knew this was like a big thing. And come to find out, in the life insurance industry, the way they test for tobacco usage is a cotinine, is a urine cotinine test, and the cotinine test is highly like uh, uh, non-predictive. It's got all these false positives. It wears off within 2 days. You can take a YouTube 30-second video and show you how to beat the life insurance cotinine test. And it's basically they got widespread smoking fraud inside of the life insurance underwriting. Okay. And I'm like, holy shit. So I'm like, well, of course. And again, I was naive to think that this clock could be picked up from saliva-based samples, because I'm like, well, if someone could just spit in a tube and you could tell me how the biologically aged they are, if you could tell me if they smoked and how much they smoked and how long they smoked, and what else could you tell me? Okay. So that was Foxo Technologies, where I was like, look, I could, because if you go to life insurance industry and you talk to life insurance, they're sold by agents. And the agents are like, well, I'd like to I finally convince you to buy a life insurance policy. They go, great. Now I'm going to send a paramed nurse over to collect 4 vials of blood, pee in a cup, and then they're going to run all of these standard, tests, based off of 1965 technologies to tell me if you got smoked, if you've got, hypertension, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, if you could just spit in a tube and get as good or better information, if I could risk classify you in the same bucket that you were going to get this person in by taking 4 vials of blood, peeing in a cup, and taking 6 to 8 weeks to get to, I think I got a good business here. Okay. Because the insurance agents, when I talk to them, they're like, it's too good to be true. It'll never happen.
Yeah.
It'll never happen. And I sat down with people who know some things about this industry, which, by the way, is the largest financial services industry in the world. Okay, for the record. Okay, and I sat down with people who know a thing or two. I go, what if you had 2 insurance policies, and the one requires blood and urine and spit, and the other one just says you got to spit in the tube? Which policy do you think is going to get sold? This one. All of them, not some of them, all of them. So anyways, that was the business that led me down a hole. That was Foxo Technologies. We ended up then. So then we ended up doing all of our own baseline research. We recruited, like, I forget the sample, and of like 500 people. We asked them, we set up this storefront, and we gave them like Starbucks coffee cards to give us blood, their medical records, spit in a tube. We got all the microarrays. We did all of the traditional lab tests. We did all of the microarray epigenetic scans using 480K, or I can't even remember all that shit.
When was it?
And then we used the machine learning and this was, by the way, before AI. We were at D1 of automated machine learning. I'll never forget. We hired one of the top automated machine learning specialists out of the UPenn, Dr. Randy Olson. Okay, we hired this kid who was like one of the best automated machine learning guys. And so we collected all this data, and he was trying to do the machine learning, and he's like, oh, fuck, I'll never be able to figure this out. And right at that very moment, some first gen, let's just call them AI tools, started to arrive, one called Data Robot, where he goes, hey, this little thing called Data Robot's available. I can get it free for the first month. It'd be really helpful to do our analysis. I'm like, fuck yeah, get that thing. I don't really, you know what I mean? And so we get the Data Robot, and he puts all the data in it, and we sit there and we watch all the robots start to do all the analytics. And sure enough, we saw all the signals for all the same health things out of these epigenetic clocks for all of them. So what do all these clocks do?
It worked.
Okay, I'll pause there. Yeah, of course it works. Of course it works. Of course it works. Because all it's doing, right, is it's building on the biological signals. And I'll pause here for a minute, because this is the big observation that I came to, which has really informed me, which is a message that I like to talk about a lot, because I don't hear people talking about this. Because what it informs us is that our lifestyle, okay, because we hear about all lifestyle, what it tells you is how lifestyle impacts the trajectory of your health at a molecular level, at its source. Okay. So when you smoke, when you exercise, when you eat shitty food, you are impacting your health at the source code level through gene expression. And so what these clocks do, depending on a lot of things ultimately are picking up these signals, of which there's a natural, obviously biological aging clock thing happening. But layered on top of that now is all of the lifestyle further impacting gene expression. And so those clocks are just layering up those at some level to, like, let's just call it base source plus these things to come up with some sum. And so that's what my that's how I describe the clocks. That's what they do. That's why they work. And I think ultimately that's, why they will be very relevant in the future.
Okay, why will be so? No, this sounds great. Like even I was able to follow without knowing anything about the life insurance business. Uh, Even I was able to understand how this could be big. But then what happened?
What happens? A lot of stuff, and that's a longer conversation probably. I mean, we could just talk about it in the sense that, you know, the life insurance industry, here I'll bring it home this way because it's really relevant to a current debate that I'm very interested in, and I think it's much more relevant than the one of the life insurance industry. So let me put it in a context that's being hotly debated here in the United States right now, which is the regulatory framework for AI. Okay. So here in the United States, there's a big issue about states wanting to implement a regulatory framework for these large language, these LLM frontier models.
Mhm.
Okay. If we allow states, we have 50 states. If we allow states to regulate the AI, it becomes this bifurcated Byzantine thing that is so fucked up that no one will ever be able to manage. And there's this phrase I love: life insurance was developed by a genius to be run by an idiot. And I think that's kind of true. So like that's why. And ultimately for me, Foxo, I was unfortunately had some bad timing. I had some bad partners who, really didn't believe in me, so anyways, that's what happened with Foxo. It's all good. I'm not done. And maybe we'll someday get saliva-based epigenetic underwriting commercialized. Maybe I'll be that person to do it.
Now I understand what's going on. At least on Foxo's part
Yeah.
regarding biological aging clocks. Um, I was actually hoping there is a bit more involvement there, but okay. So one thing
How,
I thought
how,
you got.
how, more in terms
Well,
of what?
I was assuming that you guys had the license to Grimage and PhenoAge for exclusive usage, right? But as I
We
see,
did. We did.
you
Foxo, Foxo did.
but only for health insurance, no?
For the life insurance
For
industry,
life.
the financial services industry. Yeah, they had bifurcated those licenses out to certain fields of use.
Okay, so
UCLA controls the licenses.
let's say I wanna sell Grimage 2.0 right now, right here. I buy the machine that can analyze it. I read the paper and I analyze it and I sell it to people. W- what do I have to do to like?
You got to
Can
go
I just
talk to
do that?
UCLA. You got to go talk to UCLA. No,
But
you got to.
UCLA is a big thing there.
I know, but
Like,
look, they were
how
they
do
were
you even
very
talk
reasonable to
to it?
deal with. I got them. I got it. I had Pheno Age from Yale, so I knew Morgan Levine. I had Pheno Age from Yale.
How
Morgan,
much is
great.
it?
By the way, I love
How,
Pheno Age was really good. Morgan Levine's work was fabulous, and she's got a great book. So I think Morgan, from my perspective, was like, she was a postdoc under Horvath. By the way, my chief science officer was also Horvath's postdoc. So I had his two key
what's his
postdocs.
name?
I didn't have Morgan. Hmm?
What's his name?
Dr. Brian Chen.
Mm, oh, oh, okay. I probably come across him as well. How much do you think would it be for me to get the license
Hmm.
there?
Oh, I don't know about that.
But do you don't even have an estimate? Like, is it like thousands or millions? Or
No, no,
no?
no, no, no. So typically in all university licensing deals, I mean, more or less, you got to come up with some upfront payment. That's typically, unless, they've discovered the cure for cancer, right? It's probably millions. But, here this is just sort of like maybe there's something there. Maybe there's a commercial usage. So, they want to see some good faith money. That could be thousands or tens of thousands, or if they really think they've got something, hundreds of thousands. And it depends on the broadness of the field of use that you want this for, right? And you say, well, I want it for everything for all of time. They're like, well, if you say like, I want this specific field of use for 2 years, then it's lesser. And so you commit to that amount, and then you say, well, now I have to hit some milestone achievements, and if I succeed with it, then I'll give you some royalties from it, which very typical. So that's how all these deals work with all universities, UCLA, and most of them have very active tech transfer departments. I mean, that's their job, is to get the technology that's created in the lab out and commercialized.
I see. I see. All righty. Well, what happened to you after Foxo?
So a couple of things. I created my next company, Longevity Financial Partners, and that's continuing to work in financial service, the intersect of financial services and longevity. So I'm continuing to work in the longevity space. But here I'll say I've been returning to my roots, more about product design, and that deals with aging and longevity generally. We are in this aging society, and so it's about healthy aging. What does healthy aging look like, and how can we create and better design financial products that help individuals as they age? And how can we support them with healthy aging? So I've worked a lot with the guys from Blue Zones, for example, as a way to communicate what does healthy lifestyle and aging look like, because I know from epigenetics and studying other areas of science, like it's so important, like this lifestyle, it drives so much of the health and longevity outcome, which if we can get more people to do it, that's just a better thing for society. So that's what I'm working on today. I wrote a book called Healthy Wealthy Longevity, available on Amazon, and that book is it's really, I call that a self-help entrepreneur's journey book. It's my story, not specifically like, well, I did this and I did that, but it's all about a philosophy of that I have developed over many decades now, of how do you improve the odds of getting what you want out of life for as long as possible. And I think there's a construct there, and I articulate that. I also describe epigenetics and DNA and how those things combine into lifestyles like we've talked about here today, because I think if more people knew about that, they may improve their lifestyle, because it cares for you over the long haul. And growing old and with good health and vitality, that's your 90-year-old self will thank you big time if you do that. You don't want to spend those last years in a state of poor health, impoverished and alone. Like, those are the things to avoid. So how do we help ourselves and others avoid that and be productive members of society longer?
All right, and then let's move on to your book. So, what's your life philosophy?
My life philosophy is to bring a level of self-awareness to your intention, and direct that intention to get what you want out of life, and maintain that self-awareness, by and really then work your ass off towards your intention and take care of your body in good health. And that construct, right, will improve the odds of you getting there, because life's a challenging journey, and you're going to hit all sorts of speed bumps and unforeseen obstacles, and you need to have the ability to persist and persevere against that which is going to get in your way. And so that's, I guess, my philosophy is, you know, maintain a level of intention and awareness of what you want, what you're thinking about. The only thing you have control over is what you what you think about. So being aware of that, placing that intention on exactly what you want, maintaining that over days and months and years, and take care of your body in good health, and then work, stay focused and do good work, do excellent work, develop a realm of competency around your work, and keep that flywheel rolling.
Does this mean you're completely skipping all kinds of alcohol, marijuana, and other substances?
Well, I smoked a lot of marijuana over my years. So like I went to Boulder, Colorado. I've had my fair share, but no, I don't smoke anymore. I haven't smoked in a long time. Smoking is not great. Drinking alcohol is really, really bad. Like get rid of the alcohol. It's just it's I think it's as bad or maybe worse than tobacco use. Like and we socially have accepted alcohol far too much to be like, yeah, let's have drinks. And so I see it showing up in my friend cohort, so to speak. I'm 59 chronologically. And you know, by the time you hit 60 in the 70s, people who drink, man, I'm telling you, it's showing up all over the place in ways you just do not want to experience. So yeah, look, I mean, I believe in moderation across the board, so to speak. It's okay to have a drink now and then, but you know, don't get sloshed every weekend. It's not okay. Don't smoke tobacco. Don't smoke weed. You want to have an edible? They call it, I guess, the California dry. Fine, you know, like okay, hey, everyone needs to relax and chill out. Um, so I don't say I forgo like having a good time. You want to try psilocybin mushrooms and expand your consciousness, go for it. You know what I mean? But don't do them every day. You know, so I mean, like it's just kind of common sense. And I think it's the 80-20 rule, where if you take care of like the basic 20%, you'll get 80% of your health outcome, which is move more, just exercise. You got to exercise, just move, 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 eat wisely. That just means eat clean. I don't supplement. I don't biohack. Okay. Um, Live with purpose, like stay focused, purpose on your work and that, and then engage with others. Don't isolate yourself in a way that just sort of like you collapse. And that's something I've been working on much more over the last few years.
Oh, a bit of a side question. You mentioned you're 59. Did you done a pheno age test lately, like from calculated from blood, not from the epigenetic route?
Yeah, I mean, lately, no, I haven't done that, no, but I had it done a lot over my Foxo technology days. And yeah, I mean, I was consistently 10 years,
No, numbers, 10 years.
10 years,
Right.
straight up 10 years. Yeah. So biologically, I'm probably 48. I feel 48. I mean, I do. I really, so today I'm getting in my Sprinter van. I'm heading up to the Sierras. I'm going to go hike up Mount Whitney, which is the highest point in the lower North America. And I'm going to do that hopefully in the day, and, you know, get up there in a day back. It's an 11-mile out and back, 6,000 feet of gain. The summit's 14,250 feet or something like that. So I'm going to get some altitude, and, you know, to be able to do that at, I'll call chronologically 59 is like, you know, that's, that's, that's real.
Yeah, that is. You heard about these longevity competitions like Rejuvenation Olympics or the Longevity World Cup?
I have not, I'm not familiar with that.
Now, I just wanted to mention that there is a guy called Dave Pascoe who become known in these because of these longevity competitions, right? And he's 63 years old. Um, perhaps you could be the next Dave Pascoe because you're looking pretty young, at least through the camera here.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah,
No,
you have
I've
more hair than I had. 10 years
So
ago.
so it's just like I'm just like want to be a normal dude, but I want to really take care of this body. And I guess yeah. So but yeah, I'd love to see that guy. Maybe in the show notes or something. Send me an email after the call. I'd love to see who that guy is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All righty. Okay. So your book, how's it structured?
How's the book structured? Well, the book it lays out this idea of intentionality, and this idea that of this awareness, self-awareness of being intentional, and to write that down, declare it via writing. I'm a big believer in writing. You have to write things down in terms of giving your thoughts power and setting them in motion. You need to talk about them too. You need to give voice to them. So it's not enough just to sit here and think about stuff. You need to write them down. You need to talk about them. You need to give them vibrational energy, so to speak, into the world to help bring them into the reality. And so then if you maintain that focus and that maintain that energy towards that, that's how I believe you attract those then into your life. And it takes some time. So you can't expect that to happen overnight. Um, and so then moving on, then it's like, okay, well now if we have that, let's now take care of this body, right? What does good health look like and how do we age? Let's get a basic understanding. And so I go through kind of that construct, right? I really spend time so that people understand DNA. Where do they come from? Because I believe all health emanates from a molecular structure.
Make me understand DNA.
Well, you get half from mom and you get half from dad. And
Getting there.
yeah, you get half from mom and you get half from dad. And it's got these, by the way, Watson died 2 days ago. Watson and Crick discovered this double helix structure, which is the mirror of half of mom and half of dad to create double helix structure. And it's got these, oh, you're going to hit me with a bunch of words, but these nucleic acids, ACTs and Gs, and then four different nucleic acids. So there's A's and T's go together and C's and G's, which by the way, when we measure CPG sites, this is an incredible thing. When the epigenetic clocks using the microarray technology developed by Illumina, incredible technology by the way, it measures the methylation patterns at the CPG sites. Okay, so these genes, this genome, which is ACTs and Gs, the A's and T's are connected and the C's and Gs. That's it. The C and so the C's, what we're measuring, CPG sites, is there methylation at the C site? That's what it's only measuring. Not even looking at the A's and T's. And so, anyways, we have this DNA structure. And a strand of DNA, if you were to kind of string it all together, is about, I think it's 6 feet long. It's like about 6 feet long, 3 meters long. So if you did head to tail, 6 feet. And so like, it's so incredible because we all start with one cell, okay, of this DNA, half from mom, half from dad. By the time I sit here today, I think what's the number? Maybe 30 trillion cells. I'm made up of 30 trillion cells. I think that's the number. And every one of those cells is a replicate copy of the first fucking cell. That's insane.
Okay.
Like this is just absolutely insane. I think like this science fiction is so like if we could really and you can bring it to life. There's incredible YouTube videos that actually depict the what's happening here. And so what happens is so the question is, how does this cell start at one cell know to be a fingernail, an eye, a cheek, a lip? It's through epigenetics, it's through gene expression. So the methylation is the primary mechanism for causing, by the way, so the question is how does this 6-foot strand of something get rolled up and packed inside of every fucking cell? Which, by the way, if you strung all of the cells end to end, I think goes from the Earth and the Moon. I got it in the book, goes from the Earth to the Moon like 60 times. like if you strung all the DNA in your body together, you go to the moon and back like 60 times. It's ridiculous. So the question is like, well, what happens is that DNA rolls up into these tiny balls. It binds itself up into these tiny balls called chromatin. Oh, no, you're jogging my memory, but it's coming. So good. And so your DNA inside your cell is like wrapped up in these tiny golf balls. You know, if you've ever done a baseball or a golf ball, you take a baseball and you unwind it and you see the string. That's what the chromatin are. And what happens is in epigenetics is when you methylate at the CPG site, it causes the ball to unwind and expose a specific strand of the DNA, which allows RNA transcription to manufacture the protein, to become an eye cell, to become a finger, to do the function of the cell that the cell is supposed to do. Now, this is all so fucking crazy that this works. It's beyond I'm blown away by it. So I'm glad we talked about it. I haven't talked about that in a long time. But when I learned this, I was just like, what's going on? And this is why epigenetics and DNA methylation are so important, because they're literally physically causing the DNA to either close or unravel to expose. And it explains why, none of us have perfect DNA. Sorry, newsflash. We have tons of DNA mutations, like super and it's getting mutated all the time in replication and all these things. It's sun, all this stuff. And what happens is like, that's why lifestyle can keep a mutated gene closed. And so you don't develop the bad thing, or it causes the gene to open, which expresses good health. Okay, so that's why lifestyle is so important. You're literally methylating this and causing gene expression by physically unraveling the DNA to allow for RNA or preventing RNA transcription. And so that's, I guess, the story of DNA and and why epigenetics is so important.
So if we have DNA in all our cells, then how these gene editing technologies even work? Because it's like that's a lot of cell to target to edit.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely crazy. It's just science fiction. They literally the gene editing goes in and it finds the little piece that it wants to take the ACT and G code out, and it wants to replace it with a different ACT and G code. It's like, you're a coder. I mean, you're a scientist. It's just a different code, and it just it cuts and replaces the code, so that then when it expresses itself, it gets a different code.
How do we ensure that it goes into all the cells?
Well, that's beyond my pay grade. Okay, so but those no, but those are the real challenges. Honestly, those are the real challenges that precision-based research, precision medicine, and precision-based. The researchers are. This is the field of precision medicine, and this is why when we think about the future of medicine, and I'm such a big believer, why AI is so important to this is you can only imagine the complexity of this stuff and the ability to use these tools to read it, understand it, and effectuate the code. So anyways, yeah, that's the future of precision medicine. That's why they talk about reprogramming the methylation. So a lot of the longevity chat, right, is about DNA methylation, epigenetic reprogramming. Because if you can reprogram all of the DNA to this earlier state, you should basically manifest or these younger proteins that look like my younger self, because I'm just a bunch of garbly proteins with some electricity running through it. And so like thinking about your health that way and thinking about yourself biologically that way is like, oh, okay, that's really what I am. So, take care of this machine, because when this machine isn't in really good operating status, it's really horrible. And so like it's really, really bad. And so like, okay, that's the one. We'll go back to the book. The other part is like you got to have some money in the land of milk and honey. Like so you can have your great health. I'm talking about normal people. Like I'm not about the freegans and the people like okay, you want to go live in a can of beans in the woods? Fucking great. Have at it. I'm like just a normal person. And so you got to have some money. You and because money means a lot in the regular world. And so how do you get money and more importantly, how do you keep it? Because you're going to need it, particularly when you get old and vulnerable. And so like that's the other half of the book. And I think money starts with financial literacy and it builds from there. And so that's really where I go with that. And then it goes into your work and then your self mastery. And as you move through that, right, if you take care of this body and you move through that, you increase the odds, there's no guarantees. You increase the odds that you're going to get the outcome that you've set your mind and your intention towards over your lifetime. So that at the end, you can look back and you say, my life's been a dream. Because that at the end of the day, we're all going to hit the end of the rope. And you just, at that moment, you just like go look back, go, God damn, it's been a dream. Whatever your dream was, it was your dream. And that's kind of, that's the architecture of the book and my philosophy for doing it.
I mean, it kind of makes sense because things don't really exist outside of how we perceive them to exist, right? Like there is this famous philosophical dilemma of a tree falls in the forest and nobody is there to witness it or hear it, then does it make a sound, right?
Right.
And yeah, we don't have to go into that route, but what's the point? The point is that life is a dream, Like back to financial literacy. Seems like you think you know what that is, and I know I don't know what that is because I was always on the offense. When I was young, right? I was like really poor, and I had to like make choices considering my money all the time. But as I was growing older, I just started to be on the offense, to make more money, to launch a new business, and I don't have to look at what I'm buying anymore, right? Like,
Amazing.
so I never learned financial literacy,
Yeah.
and now that I actually don't have any business that's making any money, now I'm starting to think about, should I learn it? Like I'm gonna lose it all. So
Yeah.
what is financial literacy? What should I learn about it? What do you think? What's
Yeah.
important here?
Well, I describe financial literacy similar to to my thought on health, right? Which is financial literacy is like understanding the A's and T's and C's and G's. It's the source. It's the source of money. It's financial literacy is, and even though you say you don't understand it, I'll guarantee you have you know how to make money, and I congratulate you for building a prosperous life for yourself. It's so challenging, and it's like incredible to hear when people do it and succeed with it. It's amazing. But financial literacy, like the thing that I think about is out of all the people I've met and come across and interact with over my lifetime, and I thought about this when writing the book, the only thing I could distinguish between those who had money and those that didn't, and those who had more money and those who had less, was the degree of their financial literacy. Like that, I could say the financial people who were financially literate had certainly their needs taken care of. Okay, like their needs were provided for, where people, and then they could work on their wants. Right, so money is like, well, I got to get my needs taken care of. I need housing. I need shelter. I need safety. Right, I need food. Like you got to get those needs provided for, and then I like to say the rest of the money journey is just sort of a mindset. Like, how do you feel about that? Right. Like, and in there, right, comparison is the thief of all joy. Right. Well, I got 100,000. Now I want 200 because, like I got 200, I want 400. And you make the analogy, even the most wealthiest billionaire, when he looks to Warren Buffett goes, I'm a piker. I got nothing. So there's no end to that rat race. And so the rest of this is very mental. But financial literacy is about what's a balance sheet? What are assets? What are liabilities? Can you create a personal balance sheet? Do you know what that is? What about your revenues and your expenses? Can you create a personal financial statement to manage your money and know what your personal balance sheet's looking like? So you can, you know, moderate your lifestyle and make informed choices so that you don't wake up one day, and or if you do, you go like, well, I made that I knew I was putting myself at risk, and that's okay, but I at least knew it. Okay. Then there's some other rules that I think are really important, and like diversification and investing. So invest, like what are just in basic investments, making sure everyone has sort of an idea of that. I go through them in my book. Like I'm like, okay, if you know all this stuff, skip ahead. But if you don't, let's just like tackle the basics right here, because there's no better time than the present to take the basics on. But going back to investing, like invest in yourself. Like that's the number one investment people miss all the time. They think investing is some other thing. No, you, and you know this from you have the power to make more money and achieve more than any other other investment that you can make, an investment in others. So when you invest in yourself, you control the investment, you control it. When you invest in others, a stock, a this, a that, you don't control it. And so you really got to understand that distinction. It's great. You invest in yourself because you can own it. When you invest in others, you no longer control it. And so like just know that, and know that if you are going to take big risks in investing in yourself or others, that you're taking those risks and you can afford the consequences of the unpredictable things that can and do happen. So prepare for it and be informed that it does happen. So yeah, that's a little bit more about money and financial literacy, I guess.
So you see, something that I would contrast it to. So I just recently listened to the Netflix founder um, audiobook story, right? How he created Netflix. And in that, he mentioned that he was very aware and trying to live by this concept of OPM, other people's money, meaning that you're going to like take other people's money and you put your time in it. Because if you put your time and your money in it, that's like you're so concentrated on one thing. And I'm always making that mistake, right? Like I'm always putting my time and my money in it. And so but it makes me think that is investing in like, yeah, what do you think? Like should you like diversificate by taking money from others and giving your time instead, your
Well, I
own
mean, if
money?
you need the additional capital for your business plan, I think is that Reed Hastings? Is that who that is?
No,
Netflix. Who's that?
it's not repeat.
All right. Anyways, yeah. Look, I mean, your business
Mm.
plan. You know that other people's money and raising money from others is about the amount of is about what do you need to execute your business plan. And he didn't have enough money. No one does. I didn't have enough money to do Foxo Technologies. I was going to have to raise other. I needed capital. So if you need capital for your business plan to execute it, then by all means, that's part of what you have to do for your work. But I don't get out of bed going, "Oh, I need other people's money." Like that sounds kind of like, you know, like not great. So, but if your business plan requires other people's money to execute, well then yeah, that's why Wall Street exists, the whole thing. Yeah.
I
And if
see.
you're going to do other people's money, then you got to have financial literacy, because other people's money comes in the form of they invest in your balance sheet. There'll be debt, there'll be equity, there'll be both. Like you got to be financially literate, because otherwise, how can you deal with other people's money? You shouldn't.
Hmm. Well, you can just always make more money than you outpace the need for creating balance sheets and stuff other than administrative purposes. At
Yeah.
least that was my strategy
No, it's
in
all
the
good.
previous. So okay, by the way, just quick note here: Reed
Yeah.
Hastings was one of the co-founder of
Yeah.
Netflix, but the guy who wrote "That's Never Gonna Work" that was the other co-founder, Mark Randolph.
Oh, I don't know that guy. Okay, good. Thank you. Because Reed's a Reed's kind of a nutbag, actually, I think, personally.
Yeah, never gonna work was Reed's line.
Oh, really?
Even Mark was bringing the ideas all the time. Oh, that's
Never
never
gonna
gonna
work?
work.
Oh, I'm gonna read that book. Thanks. Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, it's one of the better one. Yeah, it's not the dry. I don't know what's dry one. The Alibaba story. Ooh, that's terribly dry.
Oh,
Like, it's just a
fair
data
enough.
dump. Yeah, Jack Ma's. Yeah, I actually went to. I've read like 100 entrepreneur biographies
Wow.
and and autobiographies, right? And
What's your favorite?
I think Shoe Dog.
Oh, I love Shoe Dog.
Yeah.
I love Shoe Dog. After it's funny. Could I tell you a little story? After I read Shoe Dog, I wrote a letter to Phil Knight.
Oh
That
yeah.
I never sent
Did
it.
he reply?
I never sent it, but I was so moved by his book that I wrote a letter to him and I never sent it. And I regret not sending it to him.
All right. Well, yeah, I guess we have some similar interests here,
Yeah.
but that is certainly the case that as an entrepreneur, you're outside the world. You're in the cold. You're in the cold, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. So your book is about how to live, basically, right? Did we get to the end of it? Financial literacy, or do you go into something else as well? In
Well, I think I go into self-mastery, and the application of this stuff a little bit. Again, I think I wind it up with, just talking
Have
about
you
the
achieved self mastery yet?
No, I don't think anyone achieves self-mastery. That's a lifelong pursuit. And just when you think you got it, you'll recognize you don't have it. So that's a lifelong. So how do you do that, and what's been my approach of doing it? Yeah, so it's that, and then it just sort of wraps it up with this also idea of a very interesting, I think, observation of, and this will be kind of fun because of where we started with this clock time, which is as we age, there's a common phenomena that clock time seems to accelerate. And so I noticed that as I've been getting older, and I asked my dad about it at one point, and he said, "Yep, life's like a roll of toilet paper. The the closer you get to the end, the faster it goes." And I was like, so I was like, wow. So this thing is real. And then I ended up finding, some of the research on this phenomena and some of the explanations why that is. And so the point being, I think it's very instructive as we're aging and longevity, which is, the rate of compounding or is accelerating.
Sleep time.
Yeah, yeah, it's accelerating. So that's good news. You know what I mean? If you do it, if
Good.
you did this, well, I mean, it is like it's accelerating. If so compounding, your rate of compounding. If your rate of compounding was constant, like in clock time, but your perception of it is faster, then your rate of return is higher as you get older. So that's good news.
Okay. So this is something I've been thinking about as well, and I actually created a paradox myself called the
Oh,
longevity paradox. What you just said is that as we age, we perceive time to go much faster, right? So even though there is a clock that tells us that 1 hour or 1 year has passed, we don't perceive that at the same rate. I glanced through the research, right? I didn't write a book about it like you did, but as far as I understood, the reason is because of the novelty aspect of it, that as a child everything is new for you. You have new experiences everywhere, but as you're getting older and older, you're you've seen this stuff. You've done everything. You don't register those experiences because those are not that novel for you anymore. So imagine, okay, so what supports this hypothesis? sleep, right? You go to sleep, you some things happen, but it feels much faster than it actually is. Even if when you're awake and you're trying to lie in your bed and you can't fall asleep, but you're kind of asleep, the time passes like crazy. Even then, you're like, oh, 1 hour passed already. What's going on? Okay, people who fell into coma, they when they when they wake up, they feel like it's instantaneous because nothing happened in the coma, right? Not even dreams or maybe dream, I don't know. Whatever. The point is that these things are supporting this hypothesis. All right, so then what's the longevity paradox here? People who are into longevity, they are usually no, they are always very, very hard on their own routines and habits, and they have to wake up the same time, sleep at the same time, do this, don't do this, procedurally, one after another, morning routine, night routine, perhaps midday routine, right? Eat the same. I don't know,
Not
but
me.
but they
Not
have
me.
a
Not me.
much more regimented life.
Yeah.
So, but what does that mean in terms of time perception,
Mm.
right? Does that mean if they are not experiencing that many new things, yeah, they are chasing longevity, but they end up just spending their time much faster, and that's the paradox here.
That I haven't thought of it in that paradox that way. I guess let me back up. I think the paradox that I perceive is that as you recognize that time is accelerating, right? Your perceived time is accelerating, like you should get nervous about that. Like it's like anxiety. Like, I
Yeah.
cite I cite Pink Floyd, which is, Time. It's one of my favorite songs, like Pink Floyd, Time. Listen to that song and the words. No one told you when to run. No one said start running. And you look behind and 10 years have gone. And so like it's anxiety. And so you have to like stay calm. So how do you find the calm within that? Like that's a real interesting. And the way you do that is this idea of self-mastery and recognize that it is clock time and that there are changes happening here. So that's sort of one paradox thing that I think about and I think is a challenge because I'm experiencing it. I describe it. I wake up, it's Sunday, and I'm like, okay, Monday morning, do my Monday. Next day, it's Thursday. I'm like, oh, what happened? Like I was in a coma, and then I go do my work, and then the next day I go, oh, it's Friday, and it's the weekend again. Like, what happened? And so like that's a real interesting phenomena that I feel. Um, what what Bijan says, this Dr. Andre Bijan, who by the way is a fascinating researcher, and I came across his research when in looking into this, and how he explains it is very interesting. He says the result or change in our perceived perception of clock time is the result of some biology that's actually happening, and it's the result of our more complex neural networks as we grow old, and literally the time in which it takes to, for thoughts to kind of weave their way around takes longer,
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
and our
Yeah.
ability to process frames per second, so to speak. So you can think of when we're young, we can process 10,000 frames per second. But as we get older, biologically, we might be able to process like only 1,000 frames per second because, shit's wearing out. You got these long trailed neural networks to process it. And that is the biological explanation for why we're perceiving an accelerating rate of clock time. And I found that to be very interesting and made a lot of sense to me. And so, like, okay, well, I thought it was informative, like on a lot of fronts. First of all, what does it mean? When you're younger, you have more time. You have more time. So, what does that mean? You can take more risks because you've got time to recover. You can do more. The time's more expansive. And as you get older, time shortens up. And so you can't take the risks you used to take when you were younger. You don't have the time to recover if you lose all of your money. You don't have time to get strong again if you have bad health. And so, like, anyways, that's my kind of take on that aspect, which, by the way, is a very interesting topic. I'm glad we're covering it.
Yeah, and right, I did come across the theory as well, like that there is some brain changes happening, right? And I don't know why. Maybe I dropped it because it didn't support my hypothesis. In fact, if that's the case, then the longevity paradox is resolved, because that probably also means the healthier you are, the slower your time perception is, right? So yeah, that would be good news, right?
Yeah.
So my question to you is that what's one thing you strongly believe to be the case, but very few people agree with you on?
Very few. Like, how few? Well, what are very things I strongly believe, whether or not how many agree with me? I mean, I know I'm not alone on this, but one thing I strongly do believe, and we touched on that, is this idea of daily journaling, and I think specifically prompt journaling. I very much of the am of the opinion that daily prompt journaling is probably the single best tool we as individuals can use to help us on our journey to get wherever the hell we want to get to, both in health and finance and and all of that, whatever that encompasses. So I guess that's one. But a lot of people, I'm not alone on that. So I don't know if I'm, very few in that regard. But that's something I strongly believe. Um, yeah.
Well, you have no idea, but you just started a larger topic here, because just out of fun, I started to work on a journaling application. Like, I know, perhaps like a month ago, but I'm just having so much fun working on it that I can't stop. Okay, let me explain, because not this is.
Let me show you. I mean, I've developed. I mean, you can buy them off my. I've developed this.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I've been doing these. I developed this myself.
All right. So what's that?
It's my.
What's
It's
the
the.
structure?
It's the prompt
Pursuit of happiness. All right.
journal.
Uh-huh.
And so it's a whole. This is 30 days worth of individual. So if you want
You prompting?
yeah, of course.
You're giving the prompts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I've been handed. I developed this over like 10 years, and I've been. So I updated the version to go along with my book, and yeah, I've been handing these out for years. And hey, if you want to like partner up and amplify this, I'm totally down.
yeah, very, very, very interesting. Let me tell you, because it's not quite a journaling application.
Okay.
There are a couple of serious twists here. So I'm wondering, what do you think? Okay, so start out by, well, there are these goals that you have to do, and the goals are the whole idea is, the name of the application is the first step, right? The first repetition, first step, yeah. And because the first muscle you train is your mind, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are these goals. Every day you're asked 4 questions. The goal of this application is to get your basics right. So what are those? Sleep, nutrition, activity, and vices. Okay, vices, right? Alcohol and whatnot.
Yeah.
Now the 4 question is always about how did you do in these, and then your rating for yourself, and eventually it ends up with a couple of nice graphs. And if you do perfectly, then nicer thing happens. And if you do a row perfectly, and the entire application's goal is to achieve a perfect 21 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On all these dimensions at the same time. All righty. Now, this is one part. This is the goal part. But how do we get there? There is this how do you change someone's behavior? You Well, first of all, you don't need any knowledge. You don't need to know more. You know what's healthy and what's unhealthy. Even the person who knows least about healthy food, even they know that a pizza is probably worse than a salad, right? Like, even they have an idea like that. So you don't need a university course about nutrition. You don't need to be a nutritionist. Okay. If you don't need knowledge, then what do you need? You need change of behavior, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you achieve change of behavior? Well, first you have to think differently before you act differently. So thought precedes action. All right. And this is where the journaling comes in. And then the question is, there are a bunch of theories how you should think for your behavior to change. And the journaling application is going through these theories, how it's like a nice system of 21 days of system. Okay, but 21 days, what do you mean? I have 21 days of content, and the goal is to achieve 21 days of perfect 21 days. Like, then I don't have enough content, right? But here is the trick. There is this 21 days of you start this journey, but every time you fail.
This is 30 days.
Oh,
These are 30 days. So like that's just 30 days right there. So you just, yeah, I've got boxes full of these that I've filled, boxes of
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Every 30 days you start a new one.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, at the end of 30 days, I added this one, which is I haven't done it, but then I added at the 30 days there's sort of reflect, recommit, refocus. Okay. So at the end of 30 days, you reflect. Over the last month, I made progress on 3 things. Over the next month, I will make progress on name 3 things.
So intentionality.
These are my priorities because 3 reasons why those are your priorities. And then below there's this graph that says these are the bonds I will strengthen. And it goes around the circle of bonds of, I can't read anymore. My own work. I don't even know. The bonds. So there are bonds that we have as individuals, right? To our intention. What's our bond with our intention? A healthy diet, a physical body, spirit and faith, our self-discipline. What's our bond to our self-discipline? What's our bond to our family and friends? What's our bond to career, money, and purpose? And then what's our bond to purpose? So you just circle them, or whatever, or write them down. And that's how so that's sequential. And then you start over, and then you begin, and then you do your prompts. So.
And do you bring some resources over, or it's like your own knowledge that you're bringing?
Your own knowledge, like just what are you like?
Okay, so
I needed it, I developed it like it's almost 10 years ago. This is like V4, V5. And I tell the story in my book. I was listening to Tim Ferriss. You know who Tim is? Podcast. Tim years ago, I was listening. He was talking about prompt journaling, and so I went to get this prompt journal, and it was like, this thick. It was like this big thick book, and I'm like, I don't want that. I travel all the time, and I need.
What's the difference between journaling and prompt journaling?
Prompt journaling. So daily prompts are. I mean,
if the prompts are different, that's the difference.
Well, yeah, the prompts are, good morning, remind you to make your bed, do 10 reps, get a day plan, you have a drink of water, write the day down, the date, and if you have a number, count. Like I'm counting the days since my mother passed. So it's like been 500, and so I count days. And that's a way. Oh, by the way, that counting days is a very interesting way in which to measure clock time. You actually count. You count the days, and you go like, holy shit, it's been 565 days since mom passed. Like I couldn't, if I didn't have that, I couldn't tell you if it's been a week or a month, or I mean, really, I'm almost lost in it because it's moving so fast. But you can count days, or track them. How many 24-hour periods have I? And then it tells me, oh, well, that's maybe why I'm having not as much grief. It's been 565 days. Or if it's only been 2 weeks, well, that's why I'm experiencing so much grief. Or I broke my arm. It's been 14 days. Don't go play ball. Anyways, so what are your top 3 things for the day? Write them down. What's the goal? Your goal. Today will be great if, write something down. Gratitude. Today, I am grateful for, write something down. Self-affirmation. Today, I affirm for myself what? Okay. And then at the end of the day, or if you can use it to reflect on yesterday, you can marvel. Well, at nighttime, you should read 10 minutes. What's your night plan? Set your mind to something and drink a glass of water. But then you marvel of today I am amazed by, or yesterday I'm amazed by what? Stand in awe. And personal growth. Today could have been better if. There's always something you could have done better. Like, what was it? Identify it. That's personal growth. And then there's like, just remind me. I got little remind check marks, like things like pick up some food or get your
Can
dry
I ask
clean.
you something? It's a bit more. I don't know what to think of it, but I noticed on myself that I personally have a resistance on this. This I'm grateful for prompt. Like I I I got around it that I started to do value instead. Like I can come up with a moment that I found valuable, right?
Yeah.
And that roughly gives the same results that what you're grateful for. But
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I have a resistance on
You got
this
to work on that
word.
one,
Like,
pal.
all right. Well, look, wow, this was an excellent interview. Note to my editor, the Pink Floyd quote is the best way to start it. uh, John, thank you very much for coming. Would you like our listeners to go anywhere on the internet, interwebs, any of your projects, look something up about you
Yeah.
or something? Yeah.
Well,
Or yeah.
Adam, thanks for finding me, digging me out of you did some good digging. I'm glad you found me. It's been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it as well, and I hope your listeners do. People can find me. I'm on all the social media platforms, so you can find me wherever you do your social media. Jon, Jon Sabes, Sabes, Jon Sabes. I've got a website, jonsabes.com. You can find my book on Amazon. You'll find me on all the social media platforms. I've got a pretty active profile for my business. So, and there's lots of good messaging, and happy to engage with folks. And get the book, get the journals, whatever. If if I can help, that's what I'm all about right now. So I appreciate the conversation. It's been fun. It's been a good one.
Jon Sabes, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.